You're watching BCTV. We're all about Branford. You're watching BCTV, Branford Government Television, a service of Branford Community Television. This program is brought to you in part through the support of the town of Branford.
Yes.
Contingency balance is the
I'd like to call this meeting to order.
Then you ask Fitch something.
I
don't think
Henry,
it's been 2 years.
yeah, it's on.
4 years.
Can I have everybody's attention? I'd like to start this meeting. Okay, the RTM will be convened on Tuesday, May 9th, 2023 at 8 p.m. at the Branford Fire Headquarters, 43 North Main Street, to consider and act upon the following matters. Everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we do the roll call, we have a new RTM member, Karen Hesse. She was approved tonight in the 4th District, and she will be serving on the Rules and Ordinance Committee.
It's Hess. Is she here tonight? No,
Okay, item 1, roll call.
because I took Wednesdays off.
Who said it's Hess? Is that how you pronounce her name?
Hesse?
Who said that? Hess, okay.
Yeah. She will, by the way, she will be going to the town clerk to be sworn in. She has not yet.
Okay.
Roll call.
Representative Alphone? Here. Amore?
Here.
Anderson?
Here.
Barron?
Online.
Thank you. Black?
Here.
Bonenberger? Absent. Brooks?
Here.
Conklin?
Here.
Everson?
Here.
Erlanger?
Here.
Flanagan?
Here?
Greenberg?
Here.
Healy?
Here.
Henschel?
Here.
Hines? Ingraham?
Here.
Leach, present. Maresca?
Here.
Preet?
Here.
Ricchio?
Present.
Shrestha?
Present.
Sires? Stepanik? Sullivan?
Here.
Torelli? Oh, sorry, absent. Toohill?
Here.
Verderam?
Here.
Witkowski? Absent. And Wells? Absent. Okay. So we have 25.
25. Okay, you also have Selectman Cosgrove and Tom.
Yes, so, thank you. Ex officios, we have First Selectman Cosgrove and Clerk Arpin. Is that it? Yes. Thank you.
Okay, item number 2, approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Ray Ingraham to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the approval of the minutes for the previous meeting?
Who seconded? Ricchio? Thank you.
Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The minutes are approved without exception. Item number 3, reception of communications, reports of committees and citizens' petitions. I have a few items here. One of them is from Kate Galambros pertaining to a leaf blowing ordinance, which I've already will be sending to Rules and Ordinance, and I believe every RTM member also has a copy of that. The next item I have is from Selectman Cosgrove. Dear Moderator Flanagan, I respectfully request the RTM consider the establishment of a Harbor Managed Commission as set forth in CGS Section 22A113K, properly stewardship of Branford's navigable waterways and is instrumental in order to maintain the economic, environmental, and recreation vitality of these natural resources. Harbor Master Vin Supa and I look forward to an opportunity to discuss the merits of this Management Commission. This will go to the Rules and Ordinance Committee.
Mr. Moderator, for the information of the body, these are on the agenda for 1 week from today.
I think, do you have a copy of that?
Yes,
Okay, you got it.
I did.
And then I have also a letter from James Finch, the Finance Director, addressed to Dennis Flanagan. Please be advised that the town will be participating in the Neighborhood Assistance Tax Credit Program. In order for the program to be eligible, they must be approved by the RTM and forwarded to the state by the end of June. In an effort to comply with this timetable, I respectfully request that this item be referred to the appropriate RTM committee to facilitate and require approvals before the filing deadline. I am sending that to Administrative Services. And I believe that's all the correspondence I have. Do you have any?
I don't think I have anything
No?
in addition to that. no.
Okay, moving on to item 4. To consider and if appropriate, approve the following transfer in the current year to reduce tax requirements in the fiscal 2024 requested budget. From transfers from fund balance, increase the fund balance by $646,000 and increase the transfer out capital fund 700 by $646,000. And transfers capital fund 700, increase the transfer in by $646,000 and increase the BOE security system by $646,000. Resolved that the RTM approves an appropriation from undesignated fund balance of $646,000 to fund the appropriation for school security system. This appropriation increases the fiscal year 2023 general fund budget from $124,821,065 to $125,467,065. Representative Healy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, the Ways and Means, as you recall from last month, heard this on a re-referral last Wednesday, May 3rd. Found out we're actually the 5th between the board or committee to hear this yet again. And we spent nearly an hour with several questions of all party members, other representatives. And basically what we're looking at again is an upgrade of our security system. This is, again, also in the best interest of our children and our town. These cameras are currently being utilized already within the school system in certain places, as well as throughout town. It's changed the whole system from having the better cameras and also the information is going to be stored up in the cloud. This is going to make it easier for people involved to be able to have more direct, quick access to live information. This technology, again, is just growing like everything else does. Our phones change constantly, so is this. So this was presented to us as the next best step for safety within our schools. From what I understand, these cameras can see way down the hallway and let us know if one of those side doors are open with either a book or a shoe or whatever it may be. I understand some may be upset that we just had new security systems installed, as well as what we did for the front doorways, but this was about, that was more construction costs. Anyway, we have 6 schools. Again, we're also going to be saving money on the servers, because again, this is going to be in the cloud. Upon further evaluation, they found out that they needed less cameras. So tonight, Mr. Moderator, we're going to be amending the number that we need from the $646,000 to $540,800, which of course that will change our resolution number at the end.
So what was that figure at 540,000?
540,800 is the new request for the system. Now, there was some miscommunication from other parts. I have not seen the old as far as what our going forth cost is going to be with this. As far as the licensing fees, there were some statements that it was $150,000 over 3 years. But I myself, I did not see that information. We are looking at a large number, though. We are looking at that the go-forth number is going to be about $120,000 a year for those licensing fees. It averages out to about $19,000 per school. Okay? Per year. Yes, per year. How much more I can say about it, I will talk about more within the discussion itself, okay? But right now, after all the questions and all of the emails that went back and forth on this information and what we received that day, it did pass through committee unanimously, 5-0. Oh, I'm sorry, no, it was 4-0 with one abstention. 4-0 with one abstention. And I'd like to put its passage here in the form of a motion that we put this money forth, that we could put the security system in over the summer while we're still waiting for the kids to come back at the end of the season. Thank you very much.
Okay, motion on the, there's
Oh, the number for the resolution?
Yeah, we all did that.
Okay. The general fund budget of $124,821,065 to $125,361,865.
There's a motion on the floor to approve this transfer in the amount of $540,800.
Representative
Is
Sires.
there any discussion? Representative Sires?
Microphone.
Mike, please. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Moderator, I'd like to make a motion to amend Ways and Means Committee recommendation to a referral. I have, making this based on the fluid conversation of course. I've been in conversation with our Superintendent Hernandez since the end of March when it went to Board of Finance. He's been great with the meetings and the emails. Had several meetings, and based on the fluid nature, as Representative Healy said, and the changes of it, I would like some time to evaluate exactly what the costs are for the changes of the reduction in price. What are the service costs from Ricotta every year that the taxpayers will be subjected to? Is that the final cost from Ricotta? And I believe that our due diligence to our taxpayers would be worth just a few more weeks to find out the exact cost instead of speculative costs on what it may be. And I do agree, a lot of time has gone into the system. It seems to be a very hyper aggressive discussion with it, but I can assure everyone that the superintendent has let us know the schools are safe, they're secure. There is never a step in security of the schools while this is being discussed. We have very good school system, good security. So another week or so won't change the secure environment that we have. And I thank you, Mr. Moderator.
So your motion is to amend the motion to approve, to re-refer?
To agree.
Okay, is there a second? Second.
Who seconded?
Representative Rivera?
Dio?
Is there any discussion from members of the RTM? Okay, well, let's go with Representative Toohill first.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. There was a question that came to mind today. No, the price was reduced, as we've heard. It was reduced from $646 to $548. So my question is, now I understand that the original price included 3 years of the license fees. The license fees were $55,000 total per year for the 3 years. It was included in the $646. So, I mean, we're told now that it's going to be a different price. It's $19,000 a school, and we have 6 schools. So it's almost $120,000 a year for the license. My question is it also 3 years of license included in the lower price, the $540?
Anybody want to answer that? Superintendent Hernandez?
Good evening. First of all, I just want to make a quick comment to Representative Sears relative to our schools. Our schools are safe. As I indicated in the memo that I shared with the Ways and Means Committee, there are vulnerabilities in the system, and Ricotta is more than just campus. Ricotta's has to do with door strikes, it has to do with card readers, it has to do with environmental alarms, it has to do with FOIA security. So it is not simply just cameras. That would be a very, very simplistic approach to it. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands whatever actions you take tonight, as long as you're taking that action with accurate information. I think that's the important piece, and that's my due diligence that I need to do as a superintendent of schools. By adopting this, you will have safer schools. You will have an integrated security system. Right now, we have a system in our elementary that we started to implement as a result of Vivaldi, what happened last June, where there was a focus on doors. We have 659 doors in our school district. 659 points of vulnerability. This system increases our security by having door strikes, visibility on those doors. And it's primarily focused at the intermediate level and high school level. The reason why there is a discrepancy in the licensing is because we did some of this at the beginning of, actually we did it last summer, and the funding was from E-rate, security grants, because our security grants, you have to expend the dollars in order to get reimbursement for the dollars. So we used previous security grant money to do that, as well as we used our E-rate dollars, because we realized our vulnerability. The licensing, which is very, very controversial, the licensing for the equipment that we're buying right now is highlighted in the document that I circulated to the committee. But because we already have some devices, that is accurate that the licensing moving forward is $120 per year. I could only speculate what that would be in the out years, and the notion that we are committed only to Verkada for the cloud services, that is not accurate. That is not accurate. Verkada continues. It has about 7% of the market share right now, and I'm happy to circulate once again, since this conversation has started, more and more school districts recognize this capability and are moving to this capability. So I do want to be really, really clear around the licensing, because there's a reason why it's X dollars for this piece, but when moving forward with everything that we've done already and this next phase, that's what it would be, $120, about $120,000, about $20,000 per school, and that's per year. I think it's a good investment. I feel very comfortable making this request because I know in my shoulders it's something that keeps me up, and I know that I've given it my due diligence. It now lies with all of you to make the right choice relative to that. So I hope I answered your question.
Okay, moving on, let me just say, Representative Riccio?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When you say it's integrated, can you talked about doors, and can you be a little bit more detailed? What do you mean by integrated?
Sure, and I'll be as detailed as I can be, Mr. Riccio. I don't profess to be an expert with this, but for example, if you were to one of our security guards with an iPad walking through the high school, which is an enormous building, gets an alarm that in wing A, door 6 is ajar, is propped, it's open, it immediately flashes to that and he gets an image immediately on his iPad. You could see a kid put a book in there, it could be whatever the case may be. We can go quickly and address that with internal resources. Let's say it was an incident. Let's say it was an actual incident. Because it's cloud-based, we have the ability not only to look at that from a school perspective, but we also have the capability to share that with first responders. Which I might add was a question of contention here. Did we communicate with police and fire? We did not communicate directly with police and fire because it's an integrated security system. And we've already had an integrated security system. But it was archaic, essentially. And I wouldn't say integrated, partially integrated. And the next question is Walsh Intermediate School. That system is no longer a supportable system. We had no way of knowing that when we spec the system. That was clearly out of our control. So I hope that gives you an example. Another example would be a very simple example. It's kind of like ADT on steroids. In the middle of the night, if there's an alarm and police have to respond, and our facilities director gets that call as well as police, we can go directly to where that is, and we have the ability to see what am I walking into, what am I doing, what is that walking into.
Is it integrated with the police command center?
No, it is not. It is not.
Is that an important feature? Do you think that's necessary? Does the chief of police feel that's an important function?
I'm not going to speak for the police chief, but I did speak for him. What he told me, he goes, I don't need to be your, one, I wouldn't want to spec your system. It's not appropriate to spec your system. And two, that if there was a command center and they needed to get access to it, that's a flip of a switch, literally. So they can have access to it. Because it's IP-based.
How long does it take to flip the switch?
Seconds. Literally seconds. Seconds saves lives. So that is the capability of this system.
Thank you.
Representative Stepanek?
No, thank you. I appreciate the safety of the schools. We've had 3 kids there. My one question and concern is that a parent, as opposed to a technology-savvy person, which I'm not, a parent looking at a system would really have one question, is that if something bad should happen, or a bad person should enter our schools, how many minutes does it take for the fire or police to respond? Are we looking at a proposal that is going to reduce it from 15 minutes to, let's say, 11 minutes, that the police can show up and do something? Because in all the accounts around the United States of these emergencies, the number one concern of everyone has always been, well, the police took too long, or they showed up on time. But it's always the criteria. So to my mind, and I think for most parents, they want to know, does the technology enhance the speed at which the authorities can respond? Now, another thing that caught my eye, I've only seen the proposal briefly in the last few days. Another worry I have is this licensing fee, because at Honeywell and other companies that have similar technology, the licensing fee is for a specific upgrade that users of the technology want to be assured that when there's a technical upgrade, they're just not bypassed and they're not forgotten about. That a licensing fee represents a quid pro quo for all the latest technology as it comes down the pike. Is that the case with this proposal?
No.
Thank you very much.
No. May I answer your first question?
Sure.
Yeah, your
Sure.
first
Thank
question is, does it reduce response time? In theory, yes. Obviously, there's no way that I can say what is happening if, God forbid, there was a crisis. What else was happening in the community? That first responders, there's many variables that go into response time. But from a notification perspective, we certainly would be able to cut down that real-time notification happens just that in real time.
Chairman, could I respond?
Go ahead.
Thank you very much for the explanation. That raises another question, though, is maybe I missed the opportunity. When did the chief of police and chief of fire address this issue publicly for us to ask questions and hear their answer? Because they are a pivotal center of this whole. This is technology. It's in the cloud. I'm sure it's sophisticated, but it doesn't answer the question of how is this system going to work in a timely manner.
Sure, and I can appreciate that question. The primary reason for this system is not for for the response time. It's for the daily operations, internal, external, the everyday functioning of the normal functioning of the school. It has environmental alarms, for instance, in the pool area. It is an integrated system. It also has the capability for a crisis. Police and fire did not spec our system, nor would it be appropriate for them to spec our system. They did spec, though, when we developed the new intermediate school and we look at school security, which this body approved dollars years ago to redo our foyers so that we would have a double door entrance. That's actually dictated by the legislature in law relative to school security coming out of the events in Utah. So there's a little bit of a lane piece that we don't necessarily, in the same way that they don't communicate with us, if they are implementing something that could potentially impact the schools, but they will certainly avail themselves. I can give you an example. They've actually recently, a few months ago, they came to us because something had happened at a particular road adjacent to a school, and they knew that we had the capability to look out at this, and we assisted them. So I think that type of coordination does happen, and I would hate to see us get stuck on who's specking the system.
Chairman? All right, Representative Henschel first, and then we'll go.
You want to go first?
Want Emerson to go before you?
Thank you. How kind. Through you, Mr. Moderator, to the school superintendent. If this vote is delayed by a month, how will that impact this? There seem to be a lot of questions, unfortunately. More information, changing information, trying to, pass along the information so everyone feels comfortable that this is the correct decision to make. If this is delayed, as Representative Sires' motion calls for another month, let's say, how will that impact?
Well, I think that the impact would be that most likely we would not be able to do all of this over the summer. The original intention of this, and I will not speak for the first selectman, the finance director, nor the board of finance, but it was my understanding that it was removed from our capital because they recognized the urgency of this and the importance of this, and there was other considerations. But really, as I said, more and more school districts are going to this, so the demand is going to increase. So for installation purposes, I think we would be delayed, and we would start the school year with those vulnerabilities that I've stated. So that is something that this body needs to make a decision. And I might add, I've met with both the Education Committee, the Ways and Means, and I've had 2 additional meetings where Representative Sears was there. And other representatives were there. And I answered questions, I provided documents, so I'm not quite sure what else is needed. I can appreciate clarification such as the licensing, which I responded to this evening.
Okay, Representative Henschel?
Yes, thank you. I just had 2 questions. One, I realize that you said that it probably is not appropriate for either the police or the fire departments to spec your system, which I can understand, but did I hear you correctly to say that the emergency management director of the town has not reviewed or commented on the system?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Okay,
But they have signed off on our emergency operations.
Representative Preet.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. We typically refer something back to the subcommittee meetings, still some unanswered questions. Over the past 8 weeks, there's been 4 subcommittee meetings. As the superintendent just mentioned, he's met numerous times offline with a number of RTM members, and there's been countless emails flying around. So one needs to ask, what are the unanswered questions? Some of the questions that were posed tonight to the superintendent have been already asked and answered a number of times. So, I know a number of us, myself included, were very upset with the way this was presented. The superintendent has owned up to that. He's admitted he could have and should have done a better job presenting and trying to sell this. So he's owned up to it. But if you're voting to re-refer this because you're not happy with the process, I think that's a very reckless approach. We berated him for not doing his job. But if this body can't get questions answered in 8 weeks, then I think they haven't done their job either. I think it's important that if you don't want this because you don't think it's a proper fit for the district, then vote no. If it's not a proper fit, then vote no. But don't vote no, or don't vote to re-refer because you don't like the way it was presented. Because what you're doing is you're holding our most valuable resources hostage. Thank you.
Anybody who hasn't spoken yet, Representative Brooks?
I'm just going to comment to the re-referral. I was going back and forth about this, but if it's a true statement that if we don't vote on it tonight, the only time we can vote on it is next month, period. If we don't vote on it next month, then it dies, and it can't be done next year because that money has been taken out of next year's budget. So unless we can find $48,000 from the budget somewhere, we don't do it next year either. So we're kind of, and I know I could probably get slippery, but the reality is it's either we vote for it tonight or next month, but then we wait till next summer anyway. So I don't, at this point, I know it's a lot of money, but I'm in.
Yeah.
Representative Riccio?
Microphone. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. A bunch of us are sitting back here. I think we're a little bit upset with some of the words that Representative Preet said, that we berated the superintendent. And in the conference calls that I've had, the emails I've received, I haven't seen any of that. We're asking questions. We have the right to ask questions. And I wasn't going to bring this up, but since you said that, Mr. Representative Preet, I did call the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee last week, Mr. Healy, asking him to call me back, and he never called me back because I had questions. So I tried to get my answers before this meeting. So we can talk about that later. But berate the superintendent, I don't think so. I think that's an unfair statement and an insult to say something like that to the people here, especially Representative Sires and Representative Hines, who are asking questions. And it is all about the process. That's our job. Thank you.
I have a question. I have a question. I have a simple question, well, maybe simple for Superintendent Hernandez. So if this was approved, let's say it was delayed a month, how long would it take for them to install this? I mean, it's already begun, the process has begun, or?
I want to be clear, we haven't started any installation relative to this particular request.
Okay, so do you know how long that installation would take? In other words, is the month of August enough time or no?
I would say that we need the entire summer because some of our buildings are being used. And so I would, to give you, I'm not qualified to give you the exact month, but working with my technology department, and the intent of this was so that we would have the month of July and August to do this, implement it, test it, make sure that it was up and running, and that both, and as I said earlier, this is primarily for the intermediate school and high school, and
Right.
some loose ends at the elementary level.
Mhm.
So I would say that if we delayed it a month, don't expect it to be fully implemented for the start of the next school year. I can't be much clearer than that.
Thank you.
Representative Toohill.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So the Board of Education, right, everybody knows this. They recently hired Dr. Chris Tranberg, Assistant Superintendent at the Darien Public Schools. I have gone to the Darien Public Schools before. They are like one of the top school systems in the United States. Now, we presently have, right, almost a brand-new security system at Walsh. It cost $800,000. I mean, so we're considering this tonight, which is reduced down to $540. So now, when Dr. Tranberg, comes on board July 1st, supposing if he isn't happy with, with this new system, Vergata, and we have to replace it again, I'm sure Dr. Tranberg hasn't been consulted yet about this new system. And I mean, we should give him the opportunity. He's going to have to live with it, deal with it. He's going to be the new superintendent. It's going to be his responsibility, to protect our children. So I think we should, I don't see the harm, as Mr. Hernandez has said, the schools presently are safe, and we should wait for the new superintendent's input. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else from the RTM? Representative Brooks?
Through you, Mr. Moderator, while I understand your concern, Representative Toohill, about the new superintendent, I actually believe it's our job. This is our job to protect the students. I got a lot of respect for Superintendent Hernandez, and we just got lucky that he was here for 13 years. There's no saying that the superintendent will be here for a long period of time. So it's us that lives with this decision. He has a 3-year contract. I'm going to live here at least for 10 more years. So I think it's our decision and it's our responsibility, because we are here and we will continue to be here regardless. So, and also, again, I cannot emphasize enough, if you wait for the new superintendent, you don't have the money to do it for a whole year, because you took it out of the, unless you take it out of contingency next year, it's already taken out of the budget.
Representative Black?
Pete's going to correct it. We have the money.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Moderator, but mostly to Madam Clerk. What I heard the superintendent talk about with scheduling, and in a prior life I was a logistics officer in the Navy, et cetera, and did a lot of contracting, and it's not just a matter of how long does it physically take them to do it, it's that you have to get on their schedule, that, as he says, there's a lot of other schools that are jumping into this program, so you need the installer scheduled, and you need to have the supplies there, so there's a lead time involved. So when you reduce your lead time, you drastically reduce the probability that you're going to get it done on time. Thank you.
Anyone else from the RTM? Anyone from the public wishing to speak to this? Mr. Dorman?
Tell Hamlet he's got to get up. Dennis. Get out of here.
I'm going to stay up. You want me to stay up?
Yeah, you can.
The mic.
Yeah, here it is, Mike. Good evening. I'd like to...
State your name, please.
Sorry. Greg Gerolman, Pheasant Lane here in Branford. Good evening. I'd like to express strong concern, certainly with the process, which, best way to describe it, haphazard, sort of thrown together, contradictory information. And I think if we're also being honest, you know, some things that also slant in the direction of prevarication, if not outright lies. The idea that, you know, earlier from the very beginning, this was described as, well, there's a lot of communication and lockstep with, you know, our other town departments, and that hasn't been the case. So why would there be discrepancies and lies and prevarications about that? You know, regarding the merits or lack of merits of the system versus others, I am certainly no expert. I don't believe that there is that kind of expert within, you know, within this room. But the thing that seems to have the most merit is the timing of it. Why are we rushing suddenly to get a system in? We have a new superintendent coming in less than 60 days, who also has benefits of, you know, working in some districts that are among the best in the state. What are his plans? I don't know. What his plans involve school resource officers and other things that other districts do that we don't. While I appreciate Mr. Hernandez's talk about, you know, concern about safety, et cetera, again, if we're being honest, and I am, okay, much to my detriment at times, but I will continue to do that. You know, there have been a number of cases where things have fallen through the cracks with regard to security. So it's great to hear the superintendent talk about his concerns, but the actions haven't always been there. And I think many of us can think back to different instances and different problems and different gaps in communication, et cetera, that were highly problematic. But getting back to this, the issue is timing. Why would we want to rush to do something that's costly, haphazard, and is being sort of thrown together and maybe even lied about a little here and there? I mean, I have an email from the police chief, no conversation beforehand. I spoke to the fire chief, no conversation beforehand. That wasn't how it was communicated. You know, people can say, all right, well, here he is, he's a big mouth, he's going to talk against district leadership. You can do that, that's fine. But I'm stating the facts, and there's a bigger issue here. So what we're ultimately doing is rushing for something that doesn't feel right, doesn't sound right, doesn't smell right, doesn't look right. A new superintendent right around the corner. How about the notion, as is done in business all the time, the notion of this person coming on in and this is one of the first things on their list? Maybe Verkada is part of what this person might look at as a future solution. Maybe it's not. Maybe part of it is. I don't know. But it would seem that from a timing perspective, that needs to be a weighted average. And I think you would all consider that. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Anyone else from the public wishing to speak to this item? Anyone else from the RTM? Representative Cyrus?
Yes.
Mike, please.
Microphone, please.
Spend my extra microphone.
To Mr. Moderator, thank you. So sitting here, I will tell you, Mr. Preet, I hate to say it, and through you, Mr. Moderator, I'm not supposed to be direct, but I was accosted, and I was abused, and I was yelled at for questioning the process. And it wasn't the process I was questioning, it was the dollar amount that I am questioning. That is what the job is of the RTM. Dollar for dollar. Mr. Hernandez, you and I have had many conversations about this. It is not about anything other than the people of the town of Branford have to know what their dollars are, what they're getting for their dollar, period. Not about anything else. So if we dropped it $100,000, let's find out what the new 100,000, 500,000 is going to get the people of Branford. That's all I was asking for. And you have graciously offered to provide me today with information so I can make an informed decision. I graciously accept yours and Mr. Perdone's information. So while I gather this information, so you agree to allow me to make an informed consent agreement for the dollars for the budget, that's all I'm asking for at the referral. If it's a week, we hold a special meeting. I'm not saying it has to take months. What I'm saying is due diligence as we are to our taxpayers. And no, I don't believe that an RTM member should have been discussed in an abrasive way for daring to question this process. I think it's 100% wrong. I think the people of Branford deserve better, and there is nothing wrong with waiting a week or two while you send the information that you agreed to send me today. That's all, for an informed decision. And I can reiterate it, I'm not going to go through it again, beating around the bush. It will be exactly what I asked for, and if you're willing to, that's fine. I still would like to see it, regardless of how it goes tonight. So when the people in District 5 say, well, okay, so it was $545, what are we getting for that money? I can alliterate it exactly, not say a good system, a poor system. That's all I'm asking. Thank you.
May I just say one thing to that? I just want to make sure I'm clear about that. Representative Sears, you've attended all of the meetings. You have attended every meeting, both the formal meetings as well as the informal meetings. You have attended those. I have provided the detail of the items and the cost at the last Ways and Means. I've also provided that via email, so I don't know if you did not get that previously, so maybe I'm missing something with that.
Thank you, Superintendent Hernandez. During the last Ways and Means Committee, I was a little bit in a blur because that was when I was accosted about questions.
I have no knowledge of any.
I understand that. So that is why I will accept your information and to make an informed plan, regardless of how this goes tonight, for dollar, finding out maybe it should be more than $100,000. Maybe we should be paying more. Maybe there's a better system out that. God forbid I say this, but maybe there's something that costs more than $600,000. Maybe.
We're very comfortable with the system.
But what I'm saying is, I just want to know so I can explain it what the dollar for dollar is. It has nothing to do about a feeling or process or feel good. This is just strictly facts. That's it. And I wish you well in your future endeavors.
Thank you.
Representative Healy?
Yeah. That's right. Thank you, everyone. As you hear, we're discussing this long time about a re-referral. And again, I stand in the same place. This was re-referred last month. It was on the agenda. Anyone could have come to the meeting and asked their questions at any time. This is beating a dead horse. Every day we turn on the news and there's another shooting somewhere. This is not fear-mongering. This is the truth. And children aside that may be present, this is what we do. We do watch our patients' tax dollars. And God forbid there is any kind of issues, what are you going to say then? Because right now the licensing fee, 0.0009% of our budget. We spend so much on tennis courts. basketball courts. You're gonna really complain about a security system that's integrative in our town, saving the schools? We refer this again? Have more questions? That's sad. That's sad. That's politics, and it's sad. You know where I stand.
All right, last time,
We have
Mr.
one.
Riccio, this is it.
Yeah, it's
We've
somebody.
had enough debate on this.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Mike, please.
Mr.
I think the concern, and I'm going to ask a question after I make my statement, is we're going to spend $500,000. No one's questioning upgrading the system. No one's questioning safety.
Right, exactly.
I mean, please, don't insult us, Mr. Healy. Please don't insult us. The issue at hand is spending $500,000 and has the new superintendent given his input on it. Now, my question is, can someone call up the new superintendent and ask him, what do you think of this new system? And give us some feedback? I think that's the big issue that I'm hearing.
He's not
We're not questioning the money. So, please don't insult us, Mr. Healy. I mean, it's insulting. People are asking about, is this the best system that we're purchasing? Is it the best system? And maybe it's not going to cost $500,000. Maybe it's going to cost $750,000 to get the best system. That's the question at hand. Thank you.
Selectman Castro, you want to speak to this?
Representative, Mr. Moderator, can I call recess, please?
No.
Yes.
I've already mentioned that this is it. No more debate. We've had enough debate. We have an issue here.
You'd like to
refer
No,
this.
we're requesting a
Oh,
recess.
I'm sorry. I thought you were calling to move the question.
Oh,
No.
I'm moving the question.
Yes.
This is my wheelhouse.
Yes, you can.
Recess.
Recess. Go
Thank
ahead.
you, Mr. Moderator.
We'll be back. I'll give you 10 minutes. 5
5
minutes,
minutes.
Josh. I'll give you 5 minutes.
Which means
Thank you.
That was great.
I knew this was going to suck up all this time.
Well, that's why I want.
Okay, I'd like to call this meeting back to order. Let's go, let's go. Let's go. Representative Alphone, Representative Hines. let's
My
go.
mouse is dead. I didn't hurt it.
This meeting is reconvened. No further discussion on this item. I think we've had enough in this.
We got to vote twice.
We're going to vote.
At
The
least.
motion to on the floor is to amend the
Might be voted
report to re-refer this item. All those in favor of referral signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Or show of hands, rather, I should say.
Re-referral.
This is to re-refer now. All those against? The amendment fails. We're back to the main motion now, presented by Representative Healy. All those in favor of the $540,000?
You got to ask for discussion, unfortunately. You have to ask for discussion.
He's correct. There has to be discussion.
You have to ask for discussion. I just.
A discussion, yeah.
Yeah.
We're back to the main motion.
Yeah.
Any further discussion on the main motion to approve the $540,800? Hearing none, all those in favor, raise their hands. Opposed?
Opposed
Main
is
motion passes.
Two Hill. Do you need
I
names?
don't know, if we
Is there
don't
any
do roll
abstentions?
call, no, I don't. I don't think it's,
You need the number though, don't you?
no, not if it's a voice vote, it's a pass, right?
Pass.
Yeah.
Okay. Pass.
Okay, moving on to item 5. The Board of Finance approved the following budget for the fiscal year 2023-2024. Board of Education operating budget, $62,911,644. Board of Education Special Education, nothing. Board of Education Capital Leases, $571,925. For a subtotal of the education of $63,483,569. Town departments of $67,027,199. For a total of $130,510,768. Representative Ingram.
I guess I thought I had to read all that, but thank you. Mr. Moderator, I'd like to make the motion that we approve this budget, very responsible budget, as presented by the Board of Finance.
Is there a second?
Second.
Healy.
Okay, before we have discussion on that, we're going to move on to the various subcommittees and hear their reports. I would ask the subcommittee chairs, when giving their presentation, to also state the various budgets that you heard, so everybody knows what the budgets you took place. So moving on to the education budget, Representative Preet.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The Education Subcommittee met on May 1st to act on the Board of Finance amended budget for the Board of Education. After receiving a detailed presentation by the superintendent and by the Board of Ed chairman in our April meeting, the committee voted 6-0 to accept a budget of $63,483,569. And again, it was a vote 6-0. There was one member absent.
Motion on the floor to approve. Is there any discussion from members of the RTM? Representative Brooks?
I have we've had this discussion, but I'm going to ask a point of information. There's a motion on the floor to approve what came out of subcommittee. There's a motion on the floor to approve the entire budget as recommended by the Board of Finance. I would ask the parliamentarian if we vote on the individual, budgets that come out of, so I'm going to give you a hypothetical.
Yeah.
We're going to vote on the education budget right now. And if I make an amendment to cut $5 million, I'm not going to do that. If I make a motion to cut $5 million and I want to put it in the rules and ordinance budget because, you know, they're awesome, but I haven't heard that budget yet, I can't vote on the education budget. Do you understand what I'm saying? If I vote on the education budget, but then I want to change it later from rules and ordinance or admin services, can I do that if we vote on that budget?
I think the motion made by Representative Ingraham was to approve as recommended by the Board of Finance. So I'm not really sure why we're chipping away.
Because he just made a motion.
I think there are going to be very few changes here.
Okay, but he just made a motion that we accept the budget, the recommendation by, and if I vote for it, I can't change it later.
Okay, then in that case, we've got two motions on the floor, and I think
Did he make
it's
a
just
motion?
sort of habit that he made the motion.
First one was
We either
the
need to
budget.
withdraw
The other
the
one was the
general
committee.
motion and deal with or he should withdraw his.
Traditionally, if I may speak to this, Representative Brooks, the majority leader makes a motion to approve the budget as recommended by the Board of Finance. Then we hear each subcommittee's report if there's any changes. After we conclude all that, if there's no changes to these subcommittees, then we go back to the main motion.
So there's no motion from the Education Committee, correct?
There should not be, because we can't have two motions on the floor at
Correct.
the same time.
Got it.
The motion was from the
We're done.
majority leader. He's made a report, I think out of habit, because we usually say I put that in the form of a motion or something.
Just want a clarification from you.
But that.
That's correct.
That
You
should
should
be.
ask
That's
them
correct.
first.
That was
instead of-
improper, so we just have one, and I know there are going to be some changes as salary increases that we put in as this process has gone through and some other things. But I think we'll have, one group of changes to the whole budget, and then, if you want to, I know we should take $5 million from, I don't care where, but give it to the Rules and Ordinances Chair, Rules and Ordinances Chair for his slush fund.
So
So he's paying him up.
all right, so at this point, what Representative Preet is saying, the Education Committee had met, and there's no changes to their budget.
And he didn't put, but he did put that in the form of a
Yeah,
motion.
right.
And it's not a motion.
Mr. Moderator? Mr. Moderator, and now I get what Representative Brooks was trying to explain to me before, and understand what so I think what we should do is go through this with the reports from each of the committees of what came out of every one of their meetings. I'm doing exactly what you asked for. And then any one of us that wants to make an amendment to anything that's going on, we can do that and say where we'd like it to come from, where we'd like it to go.
Correct.
I had to say it out loud, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'll go
you.
over it. Yeah,
And we
that's-
haven't done that
that's-
before.
That's basically what we kind of
Well
do.
before, but that makes sense.
So Representative Preet,
I didn't make a
There's no motion.
no, just withdraw it. So you're.
There was no motion.
It wasn't, so.
He didn't make a motion.
You didn't make a
He
motion.
did?
I
I
did.
didn't
I thought
write
I
that
just
I
down.
don't think he did.
No, he didn't.
All right, he didn't make it.
It's just, you're just used to it.
All right, so
Forget it. He did.
Representative Preet. Representative Preet, there was no changes to the education budget.
That is correct, Mr. Martin.
Okay, how about the two libraries next? Blackstone and Willoughby Wallace.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Again, the Education Committee met on May 1st to act on the Board of Finance amended budgets for the two libraries, the Willoughby Wallace Library and the Blackstone Library. The vote was 6-0 for both of these budgets. Willoughby Wallace Library was for $269,741, and for the Blackstone it was $1,700,340 operating and a $30,000 request for capital. And if I just may make a comment, I want to just remind the RTM members on the Blackstone Library that we implemented a strategy last year to ensure the long-term solvency of their endowment. And that strategy was to base the withdrawal percentage each year on inflation and not on the endowment's investment results. And I believe that the budget request that came in from the Blackstone reflects that approach. Thank you.
Point of order, Mr. Moderator.
Yeah, go ahead, Bert.
While we're not having a motion, I would entertain that after each report is given, that any comments that members or other people have be made after the report while it's still fresh in our mind. Would that please this body?
Okay with that.
Yeah, that's the way it's gonna be. If you have an amendment or something.
Well, I just have a couple comments on the education budget.
You can have comments on it.
But since there's no discussion, via motion.
No, it's permissible. Okay?
Josh
ahead,
for
Representative
parliamentarian. Josh for parliamentarian.
Sorry, really. I would like to make 2 comments on this budget, if I might. I would like to point out that for the first time in as long as I can remember, the Board of Education operating budget and capital budget has come down below the town department budgets, meaning that the school system is now a less percentage than the town budget. And from a long time ago, I don't recall that. So I'm not gonna give kudos to anybody, but if they need it, they get it. But I also would like to point out, having said that we need, as a body, need to be aware that 2.1 million or over of the education budget is being paid for and not reflective in that number by ESSER, which is a form of ARPA, which we'll thank President Biden for. But also that at some point we may have to pick up some of those funds. So I would be aware that while it is low now, if that ESSER runs out, we may be on the hook for another $2.1 million.
Okay, nothing further on the education budget. Moving on to, wait.
Can I make a comment?
Are you making an amendment?
No, he wants to make a comment.
Make a comment, yes. Go ahead.
Mike, please.
Mike.
Just, we'll have motions at the end.
Historically, we have given 14 years I've been on this body, we typically give the Board of Education about a 1% increase in their budget. That sound right to everybody?
No.
1.2%? 1.5?
1.8.
At least
1.8,
2.
okay?
At least
So
2.
between 1% and 1.8%. Okay?
Between.
Everybody agree with that typically?
No.
No?
1.8.
Yeah, but, okay, so it's about, we'll call it 1.8%. The Board of Education came in, and if my numbers are correct, at 8.5%. That's what they originally were asking for. When I saw that, it was like, whoa. Boy, what a jump. And we're going to give them this year, it's a 3%, 3.5% increase?
2.5.
2.5, right?
325, 325.
Right.
Send them back to math class.
Well, I just can't remember all these numbers. So, let me give you a couple of other facts. Old Lyme High School. U.S. News Report, ranked 18th. Guilford, ranked number 32 out of 209 schools. Madison, ranked number 34. Durham, 52. Old Saybrook, number 57. Westbrook, number 82. In Branford, number 98 out of 209 schools. I will not be voting for this budget because what we're doing is we continue to give more money to a Board of Education system that is mediocre, in my opinion. And until people in this town start asking that, why we continue to increase their budget, we will continue to have these type of results, in my opinion. We're not getting a good, I don't feel we're not getting good value. That's why Representative Sires and others were asking questions about that $500,000 for the alarm system, the security system. So these are the reasons I will not be voting for the Board of Education. And this is probably going to be my last budget. And I probably only voted for the Board of Education budget probably 7 out of the 14 years I've been on this body. Yet, these numbers continue to stay at around the 98th percentile. And some other numbers that I've learned in a patch, newspaper patch, 16% of the students feel unsafe in Branford. 40% of the students are not happy with the school system. 71% of the students and parents agree. The teachers care about the students. That means 29% of the students feel they don't. It's a 73% proficient reading score and 48% proficient in math. You guys want to give this system a raise? Go ahead. But that's not going to be on my conscience. Thank you.
Okay, nothing further on the education. Moving on to the next subcommittee, Ways and Means. Representative Healy.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Yes, the Ways and Means Committee met to review the department budgets last Wednesday on the 3rd. Those departments are the Branford Cable Television, our principal debt and interest debt service, contingency, the Board of Finance, fiscal services, my favorite public celebration, sewer assessment fund, pensions and contributions, employee group insurance, our municipal insurance, the recreation department, and the Parks and Open Space Authority. All those budgets were approved without any amendments or changes as presented by the Board of Finance, and it passed 5-0 in our committee. Thank you.
Any comments from the RTM? No changes. Okay, next subcommittee, Rules and Ordinance. Representative Black.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. We met, final meeting on the budget was April 25th. We approved all budgets as recommended by the Board of Finance. Those budgets include the Building and Department, Conservation and Environment, Inland Wetlands, Economic Development, Planning and Zoning, Zoning Boards of Appeals, the Water Pollution Control Authority, and the Shellfish Commission. There was some discussion about putting in a part-time position into the Planning and Zoning, one that had been there before, but there was no money, so there was no motion at the committee, but I expect at some point we'll be hearing a motion for that tonight. Thank you.
So Representative Black, there was no changes to the rules?
No
and
changes.
Okay. Any comment from the rules and ordinances? No? Okay, moving on to public services. Representative Conklin.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The Public Services Committee met for public comment on April the 6th on all of the budgets that came before our committee. We then reconvened April the 20th to vote, and the budgets covered by our committee are GGB, Solid Waste, Public Works, Docks and Recreational Facilities, Animal Control, Engineering, Fire Services, Emergency Management, Police Services, and Police Services Special Detail. All the budgets were accepted as amended by the Board of Finance and a vote of 4-0. Thank you.
Any comment on the public services? Representative Sullivan?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Moderator. I actually stood on public services, but I was running late for that meeting and called in a vote from the car. But I'm actually opposed to the budgets that came before public services. It shouldn't be a surprise. I've consistently been opposed to one of these budgets. For the past 6 or 7 years, we've had an acting public works director at a salary of $110,000 a year, and then a second position of highway supervisor for $77,000 a year. So that's about $187,000 for salaries for one person. I just don't believe we should be taxing for two positions if we're only going to be filling one of them, and then regularly transferring funds out of wages and salaries over the course of the year to spend on other items. So I'll just leave my comments at that. Thank you.
Okay, any further comments from the RTM? Okay, moving on to the last one, administrative services.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Admin Services met last Tuesday, and I just want to thank Representative Alphone for taking over as I was dealing with a family issue. So we met and discussed budgets. Departments falling under us are legislative, town clerk, tax collector, assessor, board of assessment appeals, labor relations, human resources, IT, elderly services, probate court, East Shore District Health Department, human services, elections, executive, and legal services. All budgets were accepted as presented by the Board of Finance, with 5 voting in favor and 1 abstention.
Okay, any comment on the Administrative Services Committee? Okay, hearing all the subcommittees now, we're back to the main motion by Representative Ingraham.
Mr. Moderator,
Representative Ingraham,
I'd
go
like
ahead.
to make a motion for a adjustment out of pensions and contributions of $195,000 to take out. This is due to changes that are coming up in the state legislature that will lower the amount of money that we have to spend into the SEMERS program, the Connecticut Municipal Employees Retirement Plan. The savings would go directly out of taxation. So that would change the Board of Finance proposed from $3,778,502 to $3,583,000 or $583,502.
Is there a
My
second?
motion.
I'll second.
Discussion.
Sully. Give it to Sully.
Going to call a recess?
Pick me.
Yeah, could, Representative Ingraham, would you mind repeating the motion for me so I can get it correct?
It's to reduce the amount that we're spending in pension and contributions by $195,000.
195, okay, thank you.
Okay, any discussion? Representative Henschel?
I can get it on PC.
Yes,
Thank you.
if I have this process down correctly, I'd like to make an amendment to your amendment. If possible.
You made a
So-
motion, who's making it?
Mine's an amendment to the budget, so.
You have proposed reducing the pensions and contributions by $195,000. is Peter Black had mentioned in Rules and Ordinances. We had some discussion about the fact that the part-time help position for the planning department, which was a $27,440 position, that was originally requested by the department, and then it was taken out of the budget as we have it before us today, I believe by the Board of Finance, but I'm not positive of that. Just wanted to make a comment about that position. The planning department is one of our town's key interfaces with the public, and our reputation as a development-friendly community is dependent upon a smoothly running professional department. Just as a matter of note, in the May issue of the Hartford Business Journal, the one that just came out, they made a note that Branford leads Connecticut municipalities with 194 new housing permits issued in March. This was almost twice the number of the next highest town in the state. So there's a lot of activity in the town on residential housing permits right now, and certainly as much additionally in commercial development. From my point of view, at least, I think the department is classically understaffed and overworked, as anyone looking at a PZC meeting can, I think, pretty much understand. There's a tremendous amount of work that goes into the both the review of projects that are being proposed in the town, and also, once they have been approved, monitoring them in implementation, construction, zoning compliance, et cetera, as they're put into practice. The position also allows the full-time staff to keep focused on the major challenges of the department while having someone to assign the less complex functions. And this may sound like just a sort of miscellaneous additional staff person that's around to pick up the pieces, but in a department of this sort, that can be a critical function, to allow the key people in the department to continue and be focused on the major challenges that they have. And with the proposals that are being put in front of the town these days, those are large challenges, very complex projects with a lot of issues, and staff really needs to keep their eye on the ball relative to that. One of the functions of the part-time position is also to support zoning inspections in the field to detect early issues and avoid expensive corrections, which both cost the owner if they're caught late and cost the town in time spent in correcting those. And, as an architect, I can attest to the fact that, corrections that are done late in the process get to be extremely expensive and just a pain for everybody involved. Another thing this position would provide is the department currently is making an effort to move into the 21st century and become fully digitized. And there's a lot of work in moving documents into the digital format, getting the system up and running correctly and smoothly. And that, again, that's something that is better put to a part-time assistant than our key staff members. So, with that said, my amended motion would be to add $27,440 back into the, I think it's line item 10141130 in the planning department. And I would propose that we reduce the amount that has been asked for. There's a reduction in the pensions and contributions. So we reduce the $195,000 downward an equal amount. Is that clear?
What was the amount you asked for?
$70.
The amount, $27,440. That was the line that was put in there originally.
And that would mean the reduction would go from, I'll do math quick.
Thanks.
122.
The reduction out of the pension fund would become 167,506. It would still be 195,000 out of the pension fund,
but the overall reduction to the budget would become 167,560.
Thank you.
Yeah. And that's the fund, the part-time position for the planning zone. There's
Thank you.
a motion on the floor. Has that been seconded?
No.
Second.
Second.
Okay, discussion. Representative Maury?
Just briefly, I support this, particularly the part about catching mistakes. There are mistakes that are made in good faith by people doing things around their home that have gotten permits or new housing things going on. And then there are mistakes made in bad faith by people who are trying to get around the rules. So I think having it caught early, having somebody to do that and go out into the field while things are happening is a great potential cost savings for a lot of people. And to take it out of the budget is sort of penny wise and pound foolish. It's a small amount of money for a critical and I agree, very overworked department. Thank you.
Selectman Cosgrove?
I hope the irony isn't lost that the party that 18 months ago was campaigning on the fact that there was no economic development that was going on is now recognizing the workload that is and all the development that is occurring. So also, I think it's important. I feel it's supported maybe by some individuals who have stood before this body and professed the need to certainly respect and preserve the collective bargaining unit's rights and the right to work. Has anybody considered that this requested position is actually looking to do some work that is, whether it is or is not, bargaining unit work? The role of this body here is not to create positions. And I want to be clear one thing. This is not a cut in a reduction in staffing level. The reason why that budget has a part-time position or a part-time account is because during a period of transition, where the loss of an assistant town planner, as well as a vacancy that occurred after filling that position with the zoning enforcement officer, we were utilizing in periods of vacancy part-time staff. Initially, we had consulting. You may recall a couple of years ago, you approved some consulting line items. Then we ended up transitioning. We found an individual to work part-time, and we funded a part-time account. So this is not a reduction in staff. We are now fully staffed. We have last year a full-time assistant planner came on board, and this past fall, the zoning enforcement officer position was filled for the full-time position. Now, an individual who is finishing up this fiscal year utilizing those dollars was assisting during that transition period. So this was a request for a new position. It's not a reduction. I mean, there's many departments, and I'm sure if we went down the line, and I can identify probably that need additional support and staffing. So this was not cut at the Board of Finance level. It was actually presented to me when we were developing our budgets, and at the time we were not adding new positions. As I said to the town planner at the time, I said, I think we need to have a period where we're running fully staffed. I said we can assess the department as we go through, but I think we owe it not only to the department but to the taxpayers to really assess the department as it moves forward, fully staffed currently with 4 full-time staff members. So I want to make that clarification. So, and the other thing, per charter, the first selectman is the chief administrative officer of the town. So you may want to fund this position, but as I said, there's a lot of things that still need to be evaluated and considered. And because it's funded, doesn't mean we're going to go fill a position. And as I said to town staff, not only this department and other departments, we can continue to evaluate, and if additional resources are truly warranted, we'll make the argument. But again, we haven't had a period of that department being fully staffed for a significant period of time in a while, in the last 2 fiscal years.
Representative Brooks?
Through you, Mr. Moderator. Well, I respect all of what you said, and I agree you are the Chief Administrative Officer. My word's not good. But, I guess my question is then to you, since we are saving this money, and although I agree we owe it to the taxpayers to do, 100%, we are going to save them more. It may or may not affect the mill rate slightly to save that $195,000. Would you want, Chief Administrative Officer, to have that money in, let's say, contingency, or are you satisfied that you have enough money available to you that if you found that need, it would be there at your disposal? Is my question.
If we found that there was a need that needed to be addressed mid-year, fiscal year, whether it's this department or another department, we come back and make that request and go through the full process, Board of Finance and RTM. And at that point, we handle it like we'd make any other adjustment. I think just to, if you're asking just to put money aside and sit in an account, I don't think that's necessary at this time. I think the motion for the 195 was made for the pension, and we made I know that came late to this body, but that information just came late to the town. I just wanted to clear up the fact about the position.
So Representative Henschel, are you still going forth with the amendment for that?
Yes.
You still want to do that? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Any further discussion on Representative Henschel's amendment? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Amendment fails. We're back to Representative Ingram's motion on the $195,000 on pensions. Any discussion on that? No? Any comments from the public? All those in favor of Representative Ingram's motion for that $195,000 signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Abstentions? Passes. Any other comments from the RTM? Any other amendments coming forth? Representative Sullivan?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I rise with an understanding that climate change is affecting our community along with all the residents of Connecticut and our world. The cause of climate change is increased release of carbon emissions from our businesses, residential buildings, travel practices, and government buildings. I believe we must be more proactive in our actions to reduce carbon emissions wherever we can. To do that, we can take a couple of different actions, including switching away from carbon-based fuels such as coal and oil, and using more renewable sources such as solar and wind. We can also reduce our overall energy use by increasing efficiency of equipment and simply consume fewer resources to accomplish our objectives. I reviewed the budget and didn't find a line item for renewable energy installations or investments. I don't believe that I can create a line item tonight in the budget at this stage of the process. However, I do believe the town probably should have a sinking fund for renewable energy projects on municipal buildings. I was able to find a line item in the capital section for GGB called Future Energy Savings Projects. This seems like a good project line for helping our community to do more to reduce our carbon emissions. The line item includes $25,000 this year in each of the following 4 years for a total of $125,000 over 5 years. So, I would like to make a motion to move $250,000 from contingency to this capital item of future energy projects. This funding would accelerate the timing of the HVAC upgrades mentioned in the line item for the capital budget that are budgeted to take place over the next 5 years. It would allow us to start seeing energy savings from these investments faster and also start reducing our municipal carbon footprint now. The additional $150,000 could be the start of a sinking fund, which would create funding source for initiatives and actions as described by the Clean Energy Committee and their action plan from 2020. I'm sure that some members of this body will say, we have a coastal resiliency fund, and that is doing great work for sustainability and climate change. And I agree. Coastal resiliency fund is a great thing. I would say it's underfunded, but it is great. However, coastal resiliency is only treating a symptom of climate change, sea level rise. Flood walls, dikes, tidal wetlands, and other resiliency projects will not slow the pace of climate change, only attempt to protect our community from the impacts. Reducing energy use and increasing funding in this future energy savings budget will address carbon emissions now and slow the pace of climate change. I also believe members will mention that we need the contingency funds to pay for all the union contracts that are scheduled to come for approvals this fiscal year. Yes, we will be approving union contracts, but we also know that the town of Branford has an undesignated fund balance of $30 million. Those dollars have already been taxed, and as a revenue source, we, the RTM, can't add that to the budget. But as contracts get approved, the Board of Finance could recommend moving dollars to cover contractual costs which come in above any contingency budgeted funds. This would happen anyway if contracts all come in more than estimated for the creation of this budgeted contingency amount. So I urge support of my motion to accelerate our fund for energy savings applications and actions with a transfer of $250,000 from contingency to the future energy savings fund in the capital improvement section. Thank you.
Okay, the motion on the floor, is there seconded?
I'll
Seconded,
second.
Representative Hensel. Discussion from members of the RTM? Representative Brooks?
I'm going to rise in support of this motion. And one of my, we live in Branford, Connecticut, and we laud, is that the right word? Laud the coastline and how great it is and why we are so lucky to have this community in the position it's in. And so if we look to the world to want to continue to have that beauty and that greatness, then we need to not just say, hey, we need to do something about climate change as a whole, but actually do something as a body. So, yeah, maybe North Branford isn't going to do anything, sorry, North Branford, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't. Maybe we should be the example for the others to follow. We should take the step, and hopefully everybody else will follow us, because really everybody does want to be like us. So let's vote for this. Thank you.
Selectman Cosgrove?
But again, I just want to, I think, certainly respect the comments that were made, but I think I just need to clarify. I think one thing that, we can all be proud of, this town, is really that we do, we are in a fortunate position where we have strong, fiscal health, and that has a lot to do with, the strong stewardship that we have right through not only the Board of Finance and RTM, but certainly our finance department. And, when it comes to addressing our needs of our community, our finance department, Jim Finch, is really, he always seems to find a way. You may recall, we did, and I just want to take a little moment. I mean, to clarify, the town has been doing quite a bit, in terms of, you've mentioned about leading the way or setting the example. We have done a lot. I mean, we have a couple of virtual net metering agreements. We all are familiar with the facility out on Tabor property, but we also entered into an agreement with a virtual net metering agreement, which we just started, those credits started hitting our bills. So, and it's out of town, but we receive the benefit of that. We do purchase all of our electricity through both the town and the Board of Education through renewable energy. This past year, the Board of Education, through a program that we met with the Connecticut Green Bank, installed solar on a couple elementary roofs. You remember, you guys remember a few years ago, we did the Honeywell project, right? And I think actually I was asked, why don't we do this incrementally rather than appropriating the full $6 million at that one time, do the incremental. But we said, no, we wanted to do it to start receiving the benefits right away. So, to the request, I don't think that's necessary. We are doing a lot. I would be happy to meet with any representative here to learn, I don't want to take up tonight, but a lot of the efforts that we are undertaking with our municipal buildings and some of the things that we are looking at. As you know, we've a Clean Energy Committee did a presentation to both the Board of Finance, Board of Education, as well as the Public Building Commission to, speak of the benefits of net zero buildings. And that's something that, we look to try to achieve in our buildings. We had the goal of, when we did the animal shelter, to make that as highly efficient building as possible. We just met with the consultant about, further, moving towards that goal. As you guys know, the police department is going to have a project. We are looking at to make that the most efficient building, we can, as we're touching that building and doing the parts of it. One of the things that, came up early on was, how about looking at the mechanical equipment throughout that building. The main construction is primarily the lower level, touching a little bit on the second floor, but primarily the lower level. And we said, early on through our analysis of the building, we said, by the time this project gets funded and is completed, those HVAC equipment will be kind of nearing their end of their useful life. They're still maybe some years out, but we said, no, there's a benefit to do it now as part of this project. Incorporate it, receive the benefits in terms of, more of an efficient system, and also touch the building once and pay for it now rather than 5 years down the road when the cost is even higher. So we are doing a lot of that. I think what Representative Sullivan was asking, be willing to meet with you and discuss more about it, kind of offline, and so you can learn more about what the town's doing. Maybe we don't do enough touting all the great work that we are doing, but thank you for kind of reminding us that we need to kind of keep letting everyone know all that we're doing towards those efforts. Thanks.
Representative Henschel.
Thank you, Selectman Cosgrove. And I do want to acknowledge, I think Branford has been exceptional in its foresightedness, starting with Jim Finch's proposal to set up the Coastal Resilience Fund, working with the state. And as you all know, for the last several years, we've been funding that to the tune of $310,000 a year. The purpose of that fund is basically to be designated in the future as projects come up and needs come up for studies such as the wastewater treatment study that's being done right now, et cetera. The town does have, I think, a very active Clean Energy Committee, which has been working with Selectman Cosgrove to do a lot of the projects or implement a lot of the projects that were mentioned. And I think it's tremendous that the town has stepped up to the plate as aggressively as it has. But when I give talks as the chair of the Vulnerability Working Group, two groups in our community, basically talking about all the consequences, the results of climate change and ways that we can become more resilient to them, I typically remind them somewhere in that presentation that, as Chris said, I'm dealing with the symptoms, we're dealing with the symptoms, and hopefully we can stop the process that creates those symptoms, climate change itself. And so, in a sense, doing what Chris says, and you can think of it as basically setting up a corollary to the resilience fund in terms of our basically a clean energy fund, or however you want to couch it, but creating a fund that had a similar impact and a similar dollar amount that the town funded every year, which would allow projects as they come up that might need funding or seed money, et cetera, to continue to move the town forward in its position, I think, is one of the top towns in the state for addressing both of these two issues. So I think it's a great idea. I'd like to support it. I think it would be great if we could turn it into something that was more of an acknowledged specific fund with a proper name in the future. But getting it started, I think, would be a great idea. Thank you.
Anyone else? Representative Black?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Through you, I'd just like to comment that I really was expecting you to be going after the reduction in the budget, but taking it out of contingency and knowingly passing a budget that we believe, because of the outstanding union contracts, is out of balance strikes me as incredibly irresponsible. We've always been highly responsible in Branford. We've had we run a surplus every year. It's not, and that allows us to draw every year from our undesignated fund balance. We're not Hamden, we're not New Haven, we're not living on the edge. And when we start playing games with our budgeting and saying, oh, well, we can always take it out of something else, we wind up going down a road I don't want to go on. And I certainly hope that we oppose anything coming out of the contingency. I know it was a big, bright, shiny number, shockingly large. And there was, private discussion about that. But because of all the known unknowns out there, we didn't want to touch it at all this year. Thank you.
Representative Riccio?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Moderator, my only comment to Mr. Representative Sullivan was, why'd you wait until now to bring this? That's the only thing I would have just curious about. But you don't have to answer that, but next year.
Any further discussions from members of the RTM? From the public? Did you want to talk? Go ahead.
I just, through you, have a question for Selectman Cosgrove. Just out of curiosity, I just joined the Clean Energy Committee and wondered, I should know this, but I don't. Do they get funding? No.
It's an ad hoc committee.
Okay, thank you.
No further discussion from members of the RTM or the public. We're voting on Representative Sullivan's $250,000 out of contingency. All those in favor?
Mr. Moderator, can we do a roll call vote, please?
Want a roll call vote? Okay.
Just for your data.
You, my friend. Okay.
A yes vote is in favor of Representative Sullivan's motion. A no vote is against.
Okay. Representative Alphone.
No.
Representative Amore?
Yes.
Representative Anderson?
No.
Representative Barron? Is Representative Barron on Zoom?
Right.
Right. Representative Barron on Zoom?
Yes. She's on Zoom.
Is she voting?
Representative Barron?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Does that
She
mean
found
yes,
me.
she's
Yes.
here, or yes, she's voting?
She's here too.
We got both.
Okay. Representative Black?
No.
Representative Brooks?
Yes.
Representative Conklin?
No.
Representative Everson?
Yes.
Representative Erlanger?
Yes.
Representative Greenberg?
No.
Representative Healy?
No.
Representative Henschel?
Yes.
Representative Hines? Representative Ingraham?
No.
Representative Leach is yes. Representative Maresca?
No.
Representative Preet?
No.
Representative Riccio?
Yes.
Yes.
Representative Shrestha?
Yes.
Representative Sires?
No.
Representative Stepanik?
No.
Representative Sullivan?
Yes.
Representative Toohill?
No.
Representative Verderam?
No.
Okay. I have to count. Did anyone count those?
I think I missed.
Okay, I'll count.
It failed.
Yeah, motion failed. Yeah.
13 no.
Yes, it did.
Yes, failed.
Failed. Motion failed. Are there any other changes to the budget from members of the RTM?
No, but could I make a general comment about the
Yeah.
budget?
Go ahead, Representative Remsen.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I will not be voting for this budget. The reason is something that I've said before, and I'm going to say again. I think that Branford can do better. As we continue to recover from the lingering economic effects of the pandemic, with families and senior citizens in town struggling to make ends meet still, I feel that this budget could have been better. It's important to recap how we got here. The Cosgrove administration submitted a whopping 8.1% budget proposal to the Board of Finance, 8.1% for the town and the Board of Education combined. The Board of Finance trimmed it down substantially by 6% to the 1.7% budget increase before us. The Board of Finance, who are volunteers as we are, deserve a lot of credit for the work they do on our behalf. Rewind to a year ago, the RTM was voting on a 0% increase, which held the mill rate the same. This budget will raise the mill rate to just shy of 30 mills, a tax increase for property owners. I think it's also important to recognize significant funding that came from Governor Lamont and the state legislature, and thanks to President Biden and the Democratic-led Congress for passing the American Rescue Plan. The school district got a substantial influx of COVID recovery dollars, and the town is utilizing an $8 million allocation that helps to shift capital and other costs away from local taxpayers. One example is the purchase of the new trash toters as part of what will be a new curbside collection program. All of this helped reduce the local property tax burden. Taxpayers should know that Branford currently has a $30 million undesignated fund balance. That's a huge surplus. You know, kudos to us, but tapping into some of that could have erased any tax increase. That was not a path that was taken, and the RTM cannot move money around from that fund into the budget. So hopefully that will be something that will be possibly considered in the future. Thank you.
Mr. Moderator?
Representative Ingraham?
Thank you. I'll make my comments a lot shorter. With all of that just said, there was zero input on reducing any line items in this budget. Suggested, rejected, did not happen. We're passing a very responsible budget, and I'm happy to vote for it tonight.
Any other? Representative Riccio?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. When I sat down with my caucus to review the budget, I could not find any substantial cuts to make. Running a municipality is very challenging. The burden of taxes is on the property owner right now. I think everyone would agree on that. So what do you do? What does first selectman do? What do other selectmen have to do down the road in future years? You either have to reduce services, which means you will reduce expenses, but nobody wants to reduce services, or you have to generate more revenue. Two ways to do it. Tax the property owner more, or smart economic development. which First Selectman Cosgrove has been promoting since he took office. But unfortunately, the other side of the aisle fights us on smart economic development, such as expanding Tweed Airport so you can bring more businesses into this area, so you can generate more income. Your Stony Creek contingency stopped the building of Costco, which would have generated $1 million in income. So what's going to happen, and this is my prediction, and there was a first selectman about 15 years ago that talked about this, and he lost his seat because he mentioned this. You will have regionalization coming to the towns. It has to happen. Municipalities will not be able to continue to afford police, fire, Board of Education. It's duplicate of everything. It's going to come. And after I leave this body, and whoever's here after that, you need to start thinking about that. Because people don't want regionalization. We have it with the animal shelter. We have it maybe with a couple of other departments. So you have to decide, what do you want? You want to increase, you want to continue to put that tax burden on the property owner? Or do you want smart economic development, which means you're going to have jets flying over your house, because Tweed will help bring economic expansion. I just wanted to, mention that, food for thought. When I looked at this budget, I didn't know what to cut. It's pretty slim. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Representative Brooks.
I'm just going to say that some of those statements may have been untruthful and unverified, especially about us Stony Creekers.
No further comments from the RTM. I'm going to take a 5-minute recess. Need to talk to the finance director. See if I got it right.
May I have So where am I putting
So Ray's going to amend his main motion.
No, it might have been one, but more than 15.
Okay, I'd like to call the meeting back to order. Let's go, back to order. Representative Black, Conklin, Representative Conklin, go. Okay, the meeting's called back to order. So hearing no further changes, Representative Ingraham?
Hearing no further changes, I guess I have to amend my main motion to change the town department's number to $66,832,199, and the total for the town to $130,315,768.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion.
Who's second?
Don't talk at you.
Thank you. That's the $195,000.
Okay, this will be a roll call vote.
Okay, and this is on.
Earning your keep.
Raise, right. So for clarification purposes for everybody, I'll just read this one more time. Board of Education operating budget, $62,911,644. Board of Education capital and leases, $571,925 for a total of $63,483,569. Town departments, $66,832,199 for a total of $130,315,768. A yes vote is for the budget, a no vote is against.
Public comment, Mr. Moderator?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Greg Gerolman, Pheasant Lane here in Branford. And I'm not going to be advocating for any cuts. I'm speaking specifically to the Board of Education budget, and I'm not advocating for any cuts, but probably for a different reason, which I'd like to articulate. First, I'd just like to cite a recent superintendent search just to give us a feel for the state of the district and where we are right now. I mean, and certainly when you look at that 60-page report, certainly.
So, Mr. Jeroman,
yes.
I'm just going to, are you talking about, we're getting ready to vote on the budget. We're
Correct.
not talking about the process, the new superintendent, it doesn't pertain to the budget.
Fair enough. All right. Specific to the numbers. Thank you for the clarification. I am not voting for, I am not recommending any cuts. I hope that somewhere along the way, you all consider not making any cuts or even perhaps adding money if it's possible, okay? And the reason why I say it, and the reason that I think it's entirely relevant, is that when you look at the state of the district, again, specifically looking at it for a dollar and cents perspective, we have a new superintendent coming in less than 60 days. This superintendent has been here for over 12 and a half years, going on 13 years. And I'm going to tell you from a historical and a professional perspective that this person, what this person thinks that they're inheriting, that's one thing. What they will ultimately be inheriting is a lot worse than what they anticipate. And what I'm saying is that every conceivable KPI or key performance indicator you can look at speaks to a turnaround situation of tremendous proportions, okay? How it was able to get here, to get to this level, is beyond me, but it is. And what I'm respectfully saying in closing, okay, is that what this person is going to need is money to turn it around. And I would just respectfully ask that we just take a look, an honest look at what we really have in terms of a district and what it's been like, and think about what that person, new person coming in is going to need, and not get so, so overcome with comments from various members talking about how wonderful this district is when there isn't a single fact or key performance indicator that would support that. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Have a good evening.
Okay,
Thank you.
back to a
Roll
yes.
call.
Full roll call vote.
Okay.
Question, just a question. Mike, don't we normally vote for the Board of Education and then the town budget?
We're voting for the whole thing, the whole figure.
Usually we do it.
No, we do one whole thing. That's normal.
Historically, have we?
Yeah.
Historically, they asked to change, that's what we changed at the beginning of this meeting.
It's a part of the total budget. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Representative Alphone.
Yes. Yes.
Representative Amore.
Abstain.
Representative Anderson.
Yes.
Representative Barron.
Yes.
Representative Black.
Yes.
Representative Brooks.
Yes.
Representative Conklin.
Yes.
Representative Everson.
No.
Representative Erlanger.
Yes.
Or Representative Greenberg.
Yes.
Representative Healy.
Yes.
Representative Henschel.
Yes.
Representative Hines.
Yes.
Representative Ingraham.
Proudly, yes. Thank you for all your work.
Thank you. Representative Leach votes yes. Representative Maresca.
Yes.
Representative Preet.
Yes.
Representative Ricchio.
Yes.
Representative Shrestha.
Yes.
Representative Sires.
Yes.
Representative Stepanik.
Yes.
Representative Sullivan.
No.
Representative Toohill.
Yes.
Representative Verderam.
Yes.
And that is it. So we have 2 noes, 1 abstention.
The budget passes.
Passes.
The budget passes. Okay,
22 to 2.
And 1 abstention.
moving on to item 6, to consider an appropriate approval recommendation of the Board of Finance of an appropriation of $69,887 to the Open Space Fund budget for fiscal year 2023-2024.
What's the next item? You're up. Mike? We didn't hear this. Yeah, open space, we did. You did. We approved it. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Yes, Ways and Means met, we heard this, and it was approved 5-0.
Motion on the floor to approve the transfer. Any discussion from members of the RTM? From the public? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Item passes. Moving on to item 7. To consider and appropriate approve the recommendation of the Board of Finance of an appropriation of $16,472 to the Sewer Assessment Fund budget for fiscal year 2023-2024.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Yes, this was heard at the same time, and this also passed 5-0. I put that in the form of the motion. Thank you.
Motion on the floor to approve this transfer, recommended transfers. Any discussion from members of the RTM? Hearing none. From the public? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Item passed. Moving on to item 8, to consider and appropriate approve the recommendation of the Board of Finance of an appropriation of $71,600 to the BOE Shoreline Adult Education Enhancement Fund budget for fiscal year 2023-2024. Representative Preet.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Education Subcommittee met on May 1st, and we voted to make this transfer to the adult education budget. And I just want to remind this body that the adult education is a self-funding department, so there's no cost to the taxpayers on this. I put that in form of a motion. Thank you.
Motion on the floor to approve. Any discussion from members of the RTM? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Item carries. Moving on to item 9, to consider and if appropriate, approve the recommendation of the Board of Finance of an appropriation of $511,472 to the BOE School Age Child Care Fund budget for fiscal year 2023-2024. Representative Preet.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Again, the Education Committee met on May 1st to hear this, and we voted 6-0 to approve this transfer, and I put that in the form of a motion. And again, just a note, the school-age child care is also a self-funded department. Thank you.
Motion on the floor to approve the transfer. Any discussion from members of the RTM? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The item carries. Moving on to item 10, to consider and appropriate approve the recommendation of the Board of Finance of an appropriation of $4,813,105 to the wastewater treatment plant budget for fiscal year 2023-2024.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Rules and Ordinances met on this and voted unanimously in favor of the budget as recommended by the Board of Finance, and I put that in the form of a motion.
Motion on the floor to approve this transfer. Any discussion from members of the RTM? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The item carries. Moving on to item 11. To consider and if appropriate approve the recommendation of the Board of Finance of an appropriation of $450,106 to the Animal Control Fund budget for fiscal year 2023-2024. Representative Conklin.
On the evening of April 20th, in conjunction with the overall budget, the Public Services Committee voted 4-0 to approve that $450,000, and I put that in form of a motion.
Motion on the floor to approve this recommendation for the Board of Finance. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Mr. Moderator, Mr. Moderator,
Yes.
I just wanted to make a comment about that, this agenda item.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I am supportive of this motion, but based on some recent media outlets, I do have some concerns about the Animal Control Fund. And I did reach out to Selectman Cosgrove about the town of North Branford and their agreement with the town of Branford for using the animal shelter, and my concerns about them leaving the agreement. So I'm glad that you're having conversations with them to try to keep them in so that the revenue streams stay with the fund. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay. All those in favor of this Animal Control Fund budget signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Item carries. Moving on to item 12, to consider and if appropriate approve a recommendation of the Board of Finance of an appropriation of $1,913,499 to the Human Services Special Revenue Fund balance for fiscal year 2023-2024. Representative Verderame.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Admin Services heard this as part of the overall budget, and we voted 5 in favor with 1 abstention, and I move its favorable passage here tonight.
Motion on the floor to approve this item. Is there any discussion, members of the RTM? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, and it
Abstain.
carries. One abstention. Okay. Moving on to item 13, to consider and if appropriate, approve the recommendation of the Board of Finance of an appropriation of $420,000 lease fund budget for fiscal year 2023, 2024. Representative Healy?
Yeah, no. Sorry, Mr. Moderator, at this point, we're coming up with blanks as far as when Ways and Means actually heard this item, as well as line item 14 for the ARPA funds. We went back in the minutes for the last several months and wasn't able to bring up these individual line items. So my apologies for my inexperience at this point, but if it's not affecting the current budget and our budget process this evening, then these two items would need to be re-referred, as we discussed earlier. Or if we want to 441 it and discuss it at this point.
I would recommend the 441.
And at that point, I make a motion that we waive Rule 441 for its discussion at this point.
Second. Any discussion on the motion to waive Rule 441 on this item? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Representative Haley, your motion?
Okay, then at this point, I make the motion that we pass the $420,000 in appropriation for that lease fund budget for this fiscal year.
Second.
Can I ask
Any
a
discussion?
question, Mr. Moderator?
Yes.
The lease fund, through you, can I get a clarification? Is this where the money comes from for the Public Works Garage? $147,000? A portion of it?
I mean, the lease is paid through, it's other things as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple, there's a.
Yes.
No, but they can't hear you at home, or if anyone's watching. Let's hope they are.
They'll watch later.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah. There's a couple different things at work here. So in the operating budget, there's contributions into the lease fund. So Jamie mentioned one of them, the $147,000 for Public Works. There was also $115,000 for the Board of Education, and those go into the lease fund. This $420,000 is really for the school technology program. I think the way to think of it, this lease aspect with the lease fund, is to think of it the way you might a debt authorization. So we're authorizing the town to basically borrow through a lease vehicle or a lease mechanism for the Board of Ed technology plan. And then what we end up doing is making those annual payments out of the lease fund. So the $147,000 is for like Public Works and some other things typically, and then the $115,000 is for the Board of Ed's part. The Board of Ed also, in their operating budget, has roughly $240,000, which they contribute to the lease fund. So I probably didn't make it any easier for you to understand, but basically that authorizes us to enter into the lease amounts. Let's say if it's a 3-year lease, those payments get made out of the lease fund as well. So it's like we're authorizing to borrow, and then the lease is like the debt service payment. So if that makes sense.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Thank you.
I mean, there's two different things working in
Yeah.
there.
Any other questions from members of the RTM? No. All those in favor of approving this motion here, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Abstentions? Item passes. Okay, item 14, to consider and appropriate, approve the recommendation of the Board of Finance of appropriation of $2,115,000 to the ARPA fund budget for the fiscal year 2023-2024. Representative Healy.
Yes, again, thank you, Mr. Moderator. Again, just like I mentioned on 13 as well as this, I'd like to make a motion that we waive Rule 441 and have its discussion here. Thank you.
Second.
Representative There was seconded. I prefer that we do not do that, that we bring this to committee. I think it's the amount of dollars and the split that I think members would want to be discussing, and they didn't get a chance to do that.
It was my understanding we were going to make a motion to re-refer us.
There was a couple of different discussions about that before this, today. Yes, thank you, yeah.
In the last 20 minutes.
Yeah, no, and even beforehand.
So,
I concur and agree that it should go before committee.
Okay,
So
so you want to
withdraw the
remove your...
motion.
So I would like to
Remove your
withdraw the
motion.
motion of waiving Rule 441, and instead, thank you, make a motion that we re-refer this line item if it's
Okay.
not affecting the budget like we discussed earlier.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor to re-refer. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, discussion. Representative Black. All
Over here, they were over here.
right, Representative Black, go ahead.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Moderator, to the Finance Director. I'm guessing that these are the items that largely were taken off of the tax roll and we're funding through ARPA in the budget, so this is part of the overall budget piece, is that correct?
There are some pieces that that were funded through ARPA that were requests, so it was somewhat married with the cuts there. And then there was additional things that we had done for the ARPA budget. One of the things with ARPA is, you have a non-supplanting clause. So in other words, we wouldn't be buying, reducing an existing budget. So in many cases, it was augmenting the budget. One example where we've sort of done a glide path with that is in the basic needs in the counseling center budget, whereas we started out with ARPA and by the third year it'll be shifted onto the taxpayers. In general, at the risk of thinking out loud here, is it's an interesting sort of play as when Representative Healy was making the 441 motion. I was honestly more nervous about the lease fund not happening because, the Board of Education will be entering into leases in July. With the ARPA, it's probably a little less formal, and I say that because when we first were notified of our $8,259,000 in ARPA dollars, and we elected to choose the standard allowance, we had to come up with a process for allocating the dollars, and each towns allocate them differently. What we decided here in Branford was to allocate them according to the budget process. And the reason we chose that is because that's a time when department heads who presumably know their operations and they have a sense as to what the community needs, with the oversight of, as Mr. Brooks affectionately refers to him as the Chief Administrative Officer, look at those requests and then help us to mold the ARPA plan. And we did, in replicating that process, include the RTM, whereas the town receives grants on an annual basis in which the RTM is not involved in, but we didn't feel that that was a good process to follow. So then the question is, well, what would happen if you re-referred it? Well, in terms of the coordination with the operating budget, anything that was reduced and funded with ARPA is still reduced. But the other aspect of ARPA is we have done appropriations throughout the year out of the ARPA fund. We've done it for BACA. We did it for the chamber. We did it for the recycling toters. And we, in a prior year, we advanced some ARPA allocations for IT and for the showmobile that's recently was placed on the green. So based on that, it's my long-winded way of saying I believe that if you did approve the ARPA at your June meeting, that we would still be following our process, although not necessarily perfectly aligned, but I think in that case, you're probably okay. But again, I'm not a lawyer. I think it's a process that we created here in Branford as to try to mirror the budget process. So, and so to the extent you can act on it down the road, I still think you're probably okay, because I don't think, unlike setting the tax rates and some of the other things, the charter isn't really talking about ARPA. That's kind of our own process. So that's
Thank
my
you.
educated opinion on that. I don't know if that helps anybody, but.
Representative Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I just have a couple of questions. I feel like, and Representative Conklin, you may correct me if I'm totally off base, but several of the items that I look at as being funded through the ARPA fund are capital items that came before Public Services. We definitely talked about them in committee and approved them in committee. And I feel like we even talked about the Board of Finance recommending that they were going to be funded from ARPA at our committee meeting. So it was heard in the committee, at least. And I remember talking about ARPA being the funding source there. So the previous vote, I actually got up to talk about 441 because it was heard in a committee for several of these items. So I don't know, I mean, I feel like we talked about them. Maybe I'm incorrect. Representative Conklin, feel free to correct me. But I think that several of these things were heard at Public Services.
Okay. Representative Conklin, is that correct?
I don't need the what that is. Sorry, it's getting late.
A talking thingy.
Right. Anyway, we did talk about some, but not all of the 410. So, if that clarifies it at all.
It does.
That's not the whole.
It's great. We talked about some, so I'm not misremembering.
Correct.
Well, I mean, oh, sorry.
Representative Brooks.
I don't know how to address it, so I'm just going to address it. But my concern is if we re-refer this, and I understand why we would not 441 because it is a lot of money. But if we re-refer, our hands are tied. We either approve it with ARPA funds or we don't approve it for another year. Because once Wednesday comes, that's your taxable income. So you got to take it from somewhere else. And as we know, we can't take it from contingency, and we shouldn't take it from the general fund. So where are we going to get the $2 million? So that would be my only concern. I'm not saying we should re-refer it. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I've been wrong twice tonight, so maybe a third.
Representative Black.
You're the right one.
My allergies are really bad.
I do, you know, a lot of these things, I think what kind of came as a shock to us a little bit, and to Kevin, is we heard many of them split up into little slices according to the committees. You know, the $100,000 for the basic services would have been with the admin services and human services committee, and you know, a fire truck or an ambulance would have been with public services, et cetera. But we never heard them all at once. And the ARPA money's there. I mean, it's a matter of, do we want to fund these things or not, really? So, you know, there may be things that we say, hey, we don't need that 600th ambulance or something like that, you know. Where we say, you know, we don't want to fund it. But other than that, I would be in favor of re-referring it. We can look at it as a comprehensive whole, just because I think we're caught off on our back foot here. Thank you.
Mr. Moderator.
Representative.
Thank you. I would agree. I think it's important to follow the process which has been set up by the administration, that the Board of Finance hears these items, and then one of our committees hears the items. And to 441 it is kind of circumventing the process that's been set. So I would agree to re-refer.
So.
Well, that's the motion that's on the floor right now.
Right.
To re-refer.
So if you reject re-referring, we vote on it now.
Well,
Same thing as 441 without doing it.
His motion right now, if I'm correct, is to re-refer. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So,
There is a third option.
yeah, you don't have to
In
vote.
theory,
Josh is going to write a check.
Ways and Means could meet tomorrow at 5, and we could reconvene here tomorrow at 7 as a third option.
We can do it via Zoom.
I won't make that motion unless I say.
Or that meeting.
I mean,
Just vote on it.
Take a vote on it. Okay,
Is there a
well,
second for the?
I guess right now the motion on the floor is to re-refer, so we either vote it up or we vote it down. That's as simple as that, okay? Oh, Mr. Finch?
Yeah, I mean, as I hear the dialogue, it's interesting because everything that's saying is accurate. I mean, did you follow your procedure to the letter? And to the extent that a committee didn't hear this separately, the answer is probably no. But everything that's in the ARPA fund, it's a point that we make every year at the budget time, is in your books, right? I don't know if anybody is comfortable with the theory, and I'll throw this out here, but just take it for what it's worth, that basically what you're essentially acting on tonight is everything the Board of Finance recommended with these exceptions. You know, everything that the Board of Finance recommended except for $195,000. So to the extent that there is no proposal that isn't in any of your books or documents or ClearGov file, you know, and to the extent that departments may have presented the projects as part of their regular operating and capital requests, you know, in essence, you're aware of them, you're comfortable with them. You know, it's just a matter of procedurally just, well, no, we didn't really have a committee meeting, and that is true, and I respect that, but, you know, that's sort of what you have to kind of weigh. It may have been a little messy, but it's, you know, you're all familiar with what you've read and what you may have heard, and et cetera, so I can live with it either way. I'm just hearing both sides of this.
Let's vote.
Well, right now, the motion on the floor is to re-refer. We can either vote it up or vote it down, so it's as simple as that. All those in favor of re-referral, go raise your hand. Opposed?
Is that a first?
All right, the item is re-referred then. Item is re-referred. All right, moving on to item 15.
We already had 2 recesses.
To consider and if appropriate.
We would have another recess.
Okay, item 15, to consider and if appropriate, approve the recommendation of the Board of Finance to the RTM that with the exceptions of the first selectman who has elected to take 0 increase salaries for the following elected officials, increase by 2% each of the 2 terms of the office of second selectman, third selectman, treasurer, Board of Assessment Appeals, RTM moderator, RTM clerk, and finance clerk. Representative Verderam.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Admin Services heard this as part of our overall budget, and it was voted 5 in favor with 1 abstention, and I move its favorable passage here tonight.
Motion on the floor to approve this item. Any discussion from members of the RTM? Representative Henschel.
Just a point of clarification. Does this mean 2% for each of those 2 years? In other words, 4% after 2 years, or does it mean 2% over the 2 years?
2% per year.
2% per year.
Yeah, there needs to be a correction in the language. It should say 2% for each year of their 2-year term of office.
Grammatically, she's correct.
Well, then grammatically incorrect.
It's clearer.
Loosely.
Representative Maury.
Point of clarification, since these were already in the budgets that we heard, is this just that this is the executive?
It's part of the executive.
Part of the executive,
Yes,
so
part of the
it's
executive.
separated out somehow?
Mhm, yeah, separate out, just like we heard the Human Services Fund budget prior to this item as well.
This is an elected position.
Any further discussion? Yo.
So could we just make your motion to insert that second term year in there so that we clarified it?
Yes.
I don't have a problem with that. just pass it.
So what are we doing? Who's
We need-
making a motion?
I move that we amend the language to say in the end of the 2% for each year of their two-year term of office.
That's what's missing. It's one word.
One word is missing, that's all.
Second. I second that amendment.
I think it's a friendly.
It's a friendly amendment, so we accept it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine.
You both worked
All
on it.
those in favor of
I have to
the,
vote. I don't. It's a correction.
all those in favor of the amendment there signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So we're back to the approving of it. All those, any other discussions on it? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay,
Abstain.
No,
moving on to items.
might give them an allowance.
Item 16, to consider and if appropriate, approve the recommendation of the Board of Finance to the RTM that the salary for the following elected officials increase by 2.25% for each of the each two-year term of office. Town clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Once again, we heard this in Admin Services, and it passed with 5 in favor and 1 abstention, and I move its favorable passage here tonight.
Any discussion on the floor from the members of the RTM? Hearing none?
It's the same
Should
issue.
amend that.
Same issue.
Each year of their two-year
Well,
term.
could we clarify which it is? Is this 2.25 over the two-year term, or is it?
For each year
Each year?
For each year.
of the term.
Yeah, it needs to say that.
Right.
Another friendly amendment.
Killing me.
Nobody's making an amendment.
So was there a motion to correct that? Or
No.
I'm
just
correct.
No. Nobody made it. I didn't hear it.
You're writing more shit down.
I move,
You just wanted me to earn the 2%. What the-
I move the clarification of the language to add the word each year of the two-year term of office.
Thank you.
Somebody
Okay.
second?
Is there a second? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, well, Representative Verham, you just can approve as amended. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes. Moving on to item 17, to consider and appropriate adopt a policy for virtual meetings into our town meeting rules. Representative Black.
Thank you. So Rules and Ordinance has been meeting on this for many months. We did get the copy of the final draft out to all the members about a week ago. So you've all had the proposed rule, and I'll put that in. That was unanimously approved by Rules and Ordinances for recommendation for adoption by this committee. I'll put that in the form of motion and ask its approval. Thank you.
Motion on the floor to approve this item. Is there any discussion? Representative Sullivan?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. This is an action that I actually sent to R&O. I really feel like we should be taking advantage of virtual meeting technology. Maybe for Representative Brooks, 5 o'clock meeting tomorrow would be a good Zoom opportunity. So I was glad to see the committee put a lot of effort into this, so I thank the members for that. I think the language is pretty good. It sets up some more clear rules for how we conduct our meetings. I would have liked to see more usage of Zoom, which is what I came in with, because I think it's really an efficient way to conduct business. But I'm happy that there are some more clear rules set up for announcing who the moderators or chair of meetings, etc. And for any of the committee chairs that may want to hold a Zoom meeting for their committee and aren't comfortable with it, I'd be glad to help you learn a little bit more about Zoom. I use it all the time for my work, so I'll just put that out there for anybody. Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Yeah, item passes. Moving on to item 18. Representative Englander. She voted no or abstained?
abstained.
Abstained? You abstained?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, moving on to item 18, to consider and appropriate approve a 10-year lease extension to a lease agreement between the town of Branford and the Branford Early Learning Center, Inc. Representative Verderam.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. This is a simple lease renewal. As you know, it passed the Board of Selectmen unanimously, and it also passed Human Services unanimously. And I move its favorable passage here tonight.
Motion on the floor to approve this item. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No? Abstentions? Okay. Okay, item 19, any other business to come before the RTM? I just have one item to mention. The Memorial Day Parade will be May 29th. If any RTM members wish to participate, be up at the Green at 9:30 a.m. on the 29th of May. Hearing no other business before this RTM, item 20 is an adjournment. Do I hear a motion to adjourn? Second. We are adjourned.
This program was brought to you in part through the support of the Town of Branford. Watch town meetings and other videos on demand at BranfordTV.org.